I'm Augie Carton of Carton Brewing in Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey. We are a small microbrewery doing the craft thing. We opened in August 2011. Carton is kind of the culmination of an effort between my partner and cousin Chris and myself. We are both Cartons. Our dads were brothers. We grew up together about 2 miles from the brewery, and we were part of the third generation of craft drinkers in 08, 9, 10, and 11. And we like drinking. We're flavor-driven people, and we were tasting all these new flavors and seeing the discussion going on in craft and seeing, what we loved about it, what we didn't like about it, what we wish was different. And that kind of takes us to boat beer. So the Carton Brewing is born of boat beer. Boat beer is born of Carton Brewing. Boat's what we do. I was home brewing with my wife's best friend's husband, Jesse, who was our first brewer. And Chris and I were doing our usual Friday night, kids are in bed, couple beers together thing. And we noticed a hole that needed filling in the beers that were available to us in New Jersey. One was we wanted New Jersey beers available to us. At the time, it was very easy to get Dogfish out of Delaware or Trogs or Stouds out of Philly, and we could get Six Point in Brooklyn. But there weren't very many Jersey beers that we could pick up at our local liquor store. So we started thinking that just needed to be solved for local pride, not necessarily by us, but it became a point of interest. Why aren't there Jersey breweries when there's so many on our borders? What's what and why. And the good news is Chris is a lawyer, so he started researching that part. And kind of hand in hand in this was we were finding as the American IPA and American double IPA became a thing, we were just more and more excited by what was going on and what was available. So when discussing brewing with my old brew partner Jesse, we started working on solving the double-edged sword of loving big aromatic hoppy beers, but also liking drinking. When Chris and I drink beers together, it's over 5 hours and we want to be able to have 10. Friday nights we're together drinking beers, and the beers we're loving are these big 7-8% really hoppy, your Trogs Nugget Nectar, your Ithaca Flower Power, your Dogfish 90. We were loving drinking them, but after 3, your night's completely changed. If you drink 3-8% beers, not that you can't, but you're definitely taking a cab. You know what I mean? You're definitely going to have a slower morning. But there's still that kind of rapture and that passion of those big hedonistic, juicy hop flavors, and that bitterness and just all the things it does while you drink it. So you want to drink and progress and have multiples. So we started working on those dynamics in a 4-2 beer, right? So 4-2, I was born in 70. When I was in high school in the 80s and we were learning how to drive, the MAD and the local cops had this kind of guideline on, where you're safe drinking, right? So they had the equivalent, a glass of wine, a beer, and a shot. And what they meant was an ounce of 80 proof liquor, 12 ounces of a 4.2% beer, and 5 ounces of a 12% wine. They in no way counted for the fact that a glass of Zinfandel is 18% and a double IPA is 9%. They just said one beer. But the math in my head, because I learned their lesson, was always a 4-2 beer, 12 ounces. I'm a 200-pound guy. I can drink one an hour and be okay. So that's how we picked that 4-2. And then we kind of had to rethink. Back in 10, session IPAs weren't really a thing. Now that's a thing. But we were trying to find a way to make all the things we loved about a double IPA in a small beer. So we wanted the bitterness. We wanted the kind of austerity and the bite of the hops to show. We wanted some real mouthfeel. And basically we took all these factors in. We chose Kolsch yeast for 2 reasons. One, it adds an ale quality while cleaning up well, but also stays in suspension. So when you're drinking boat and there's that haziness from the Kolsch, that's a layer of bitter. The dead yeast has a bitter that isn't just more hop bitter. So it's not purely angry hop oil. There's a layer of yeast, dead yeast bitterness on top of the hop bitterness. We focused heavily on not treating the local Atlantic Highlands water. It's got this great kind of salty profile to it. It's pretty hard water, medium to hard water. But I just love the way it tastes. So we left that in there and built on top of it. And then we just layered hops all over it. There's as many hops in boat beer at 4.2 as there are in most 8% doubles. And because we were home brewers, that cost didn't matter. So we could just, but once we made it, we had something to go on, right? So when do you start a business? You start a business when you're a market participant. You see a hole that you think you can fill and you gamble that it'll work. So our gamble was, I guess as much as any entrepreneurial gamble, it was some confidence, but our bet was, Chris and I were raised on the street we live in by our fathers, who were raised on the street we live in by our grandfather. We're not, Cartons have lived within 7 miles of this brewery since they emigrated from Ireland 8 generations ago. Started off in Middletown, moved down to Locust, then Navesink. And my dad's first job was working for my grandfather 2 blocks from the brewery. Like, we've never been far from here. So our gamble, like any food gamble, is all the people that grew up around here had similar palates to ours. They would want something that tasted the way we thought it wanted to taste. And we guessed that they drank a lot like we drank. So if we started off small and gave this a shot, we figured at least our neighbors would drink it. And New Jersey is the most densely populated state there is. There's 17 million people within 45 minutes of this brewery. We only make 4,000 barrels a year, so the math says we could sell it all as long as we, made something that 1/10 of the population liked. So that was our gamble. We built the brewery here in an old warehouse on the main street of the closest town to our homes. And that's had its own benefits. It's not easy to make a light industrial manufacturing site in the middle of a town anymore, but it works well. We find we've got some symbiosis with our neighbors that is better than you would think, right? Because the other thing that could be here is like coin-op laundry or hair salon. Once we're in here, we don't come out, so they like that. And on the weekends, when the town's quiet, we have guests in. There is Northern Water, which is all the slate-rich, across the river from Manhattan, gray stone, granite. You can build towers on it. Then there's the middle third, which is the kind of sandstone, peanut stone, iron-rich, where we live. And then there's the southern, which is all of the pine barren detritus. I'm sure there's merits to all three. I grew up on this water, but that's our water. And that's because it's not that our water's better, in my opinion. I know that's an argument people like to have, but it's the water I know. I've lived here 45 years. I have a well in my backyard. We use our own water in Atlantic Highlands, independent from most of the rest of the world. But the well in my house is pumping off the same water table. I know there's people that grow up in places where they don't drink the water out of their tap. But we did. And everything I drink starts built on that water. So for us, that's why it's easy to brew certain beers. We make beers where we fool around with the water to make that beer its own thing. You can make them anywhere in the world. But those beers that started Carton, Boat, BDG, those are beers that were developed around our water, and we make them here. It's obviously good. So Anheuser-Busch swears they put that brewery in Newark because of how great Newark's water is. And I believe it. It's very different water than down here, but it's still great water. All brewing's water